Hey everyone, and this was from a request from a friend of mine who saw me using and rebuilding this number 4 smoothing plane. I actually used it to smooth out the top of this miter station, half of the miter station top that I had done. Purely for economical reasons, I went cheap and just smoothed out some 2x6s, but it works pretty well. So let's walk through how to rebuild one of these. I just rebuilt this one, and I'll show you how I did it. Okay, so what we have here is your standard number 4 plane. This is also called a smoothing plane, and you can set it up to take bigger chunks too, but a lot of people use them as smoothing planes. I used it to kind of level one of my tables. It works just fine for that too, because I only taken off very, very small chunks in a small area. So these things can literally be taken down with a flat-bladed screwdriver to tune and fine-tune it and hone it just right. You're going to need some sandpaper, one of these tools I'll show you in a minute, and a little bit of water and a very precise measuring gauge. But as far as taking them down, the lever cap comes off pretty easy. This is your, again, standard hand plane that you're going to find, most common. So this is the lever cap. This is what keeps pressure on your chip breaker and your iron. This comes out, boom, that's it. That's all you need. That comes out. Now on top of that, you've got your iron and chip breaker. Iron is on the bottom, chip breaker is on the top, okay? It's very important that these two go together in a very precise way. But for the most part, that's it. That's all there is to it. This is a very simple tool, but extremely effective when you do it correctly. So this is called the frog, and some frogs have an adjustment in the back here, the little screw that makes it go forwards and backwards. This one does not. This one just has 2 screws up top, and those things come out with a flat-bladed screwdriver. Pretty simple. Okay, pretty much all there is to it. Okay, this is your lateral adjustment, so it makes the iron kind of go left or right. And then you've got your depth of cut, which is this little wheel right here. Okay, so that's it. That's all there is to it. This is your sole, and what you're going to want to do is you want to flatten this up as much as possible. Take a kind of a rough, I like 600 grit. You could go 400, but when it comes to something I want super, super flat, I want to make sure that I get, take as small a chunks as possible. What you're going to want to do is find a very flat piece. What I've got here is a piece of granite, or it's like a cheese plate, essentially, that my wife is throwing out. And I said, you know what the heck, I'm going to keep this because it is flat and smooth and very, very hard. So what you're going to want to do, if you have rusting or pitting on the bottom, I thankfully did not on this one. It did not take a lot of work to get it completely flat. As you can see, all the high spots are gone. So what you're going to want to do is take your piece of paper and run it on your flat place. Very flat, smooth area. A couple times you're going to start seeing some highs and low spots, and you're going to want to do that on all 3 sides. Okay, so I've already done that. If you want to take your front and your rear grip, literally it's, again, flat-bladed screwdriver, and it will come straight out of there and straight out of here if you want to take it down straight to its iron. I'm just going to leave it as is right now and move on to making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. So to put it back together, here's my frog, and I'm going to show you here, if I can give you a good angle. Right in here it's going to give me kind of the where the blade is going to sit, and this one kind of moves forwards and backwards to show you if it will focus. That'll be great. There we go. So this one will show you if we want to move forwards or backwards, okay, based on the 2 set screws that we have here, okay? And you want to try and make this gap between your iron and the front part of the mouth up here as narrow as possible, usually, not even a 64th, really, really small, about the width, maybe slightly larger width than the slice you want to take, okay? That's between the iron and that, and I'll show you in just a second. Okay. Everything in reverse. The 2 screws up top, the frog. Okay. And I did throw these screws through the wire wheel, grinder, just to clean them up a little bit. There was some corrosion on a couple of these pieces. Otherwise, it was in fairly decent shape. The iron, on the other hand, that needed a lot of work. Pretty easy though. Once you have some really basic set of tools to do it. Let's see, just make sure this gets as forward, get right back where it used to be. There we go. Okay, tighten those down. Okay. So again, once you've run this part, these three sides, on your very flat surface and you've got a very smooth surface, what I like to do is I like to rub a little bit of like WD-40 or a small amount of oil in there, keep it lubed, and then wipe that off and then put a little bit of a finishing wax on it just so it's nice and smooth and prevents some corrosion over time if you're just going to let them sit for a while. So the last two things that are of most important are going to be your iron and your chip breaker. Okay, so your chip breaker, let's see, we'll focus on here. If it wants to, that'll be great. Okay, focus, focus. There we go. So you notice I have a sharp little point here. I've sharpened this already. You can do this by hand. This part's not super critical, but you want to make sure that it is fairly sharp so that it is breaking the chips as they're flying over top. Okay. The iron is probably the most important part. Okay, this is the back of the iron, and this is the part that is digging in right here. Okay, okay. Be nice if the camera wanted to focus whenever it, felt like it. Anytime now. Hello, Bueller, Bueller. There we go. And you can see I've got this part very, very shiny, almost mirror-like. Okay, this is the back side. Then I've got the actual sharp side. So I've got two things going on here. I've got the bevel, and I've got the micro bevel, which is the actual sharpening part, okay? And I'm gonna show you how to put both of those on here. It's pretty simple, but you do need a tool like this guy. Now, a guy like Paul Sellers does this by hand, and it's pretty impressive how he can just get in there and just start doing it by hand. I am not that good, so what I like to do is I just take my iron, okay, bevel side facing down, okay, put it in the tool that we have here, and according to the instructions, if you ever choose to read them, what it says here is if you want to put your sharp bevel on it, depends, it gives you an angle for it, and it's based on distance from the top here. And I've got it set at 38 millimeters from the body here, and all I'm going to do is kind of do about so. Okay, and this will give me my sharpening bevel, but if I wanted to do the regular bevel, just the normal one, because I've already done that, I would set this probably a little bit longer to make a shallower of an edge. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to put that really, really small, okay, you can see, actually, if you can see it in the camera, there are two lines. There's this line right here, which is the standard bevel, and then I got my micro bevel here, which is, I'd say a 32nd of an inch deep, and this is almost sharp enough to shave with. I used it a little bit, and it started to, the little fingers of iron started kind of doing this and twisting a little bit. So, so far everything's in good shape. If you'll want to be more aggressive on this, if you've got little nicks or chips or cuts. Thankfully, I got lucky with this one. This was I got this in a trade with somebody else for some other things. So I'm going to start with 600 grit. Again, we're going to take our flat surface. Pretty simple. Okay. I'm just going to do this. Just pull it back. Okay. Okay, 20 times on that one, okay. I can already start to feel it's a little bit sharper, because this is 600 grit. You're gonna go from 600 to 1,000, 1,500, and then 2,000. You can keep going with this, but to be honest with you, what I'm doing, and probably what 99% of you are doing, 600, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000, excuse me, are gonna be just fine for what you're doing. Can you get it sharper? Sure. But is it really going to make that big of a difference overall? It's a series of diminishing returns, honestly. So You can go higher than this, that's fine. They make grinding stones, but this is for, you know, this is for your everyman guy who doesn't want to go out and buy $80 and just wants to sharpen, you know, one iron at a time, okay? And this really works for chisels too. It's a great technique. So I've learned this from several guys on YouTube. Paul Sellers is one of them, great guy out there. So if you do get a chance, check those guys out. Now we get into the 1000 grit, okay? 1000 grit. Okay, I'm gonna wet this down a little bit, and the same thing, I'm just gonna pull it back, okay? I'm gonna push with medium pressure. Just gonna pull back, lift up, pull back, lift up, and do this 20 times. Okay, and you can start to see it's starting to get some black iron coming off of there. Gonna move up to 1500. Wet her down, same thing. Okay, move on to 2000. Okay. Okay, should be pretty good there. Now, what you'll notice when you do this is that it's sharp, but it doesn't feel quite sharp enough. And what you need to do is you need to go back, grab your 600 again, back to your flat surface, okay? And then what you need to do is you need to run this flat, okay? So the sharp side, okay, here, bevel facing up, and then run this back and forth a little bit. Because what you're doing is you're then taking the fibers that you've curled in on itself, and then you're straightening them back up. Okay, so that, because you've already, when you're pushing down on it, what you're doing is you're taking the iron fibers and pushing them in kind of like this. And this way we're gonna put them back where they should be by running this flat a few times. Okay. Now I gotta be careful because now it's super sharp. I can feel it. Could probably almost shave with this guy. Yep, there we go. grab some hairs off of the back of it. Now, I don't have a strop. I found haven't found a piece of leather yet, used leather that I need to do it. My chisel case works fine, but if a strop is a good idea, if you have one, use it. If you don't, fine. Again, this is going to be fine for 99% of what you're doing. But you know, use a strop if you can, because it will make it just that little bit sharper with a bit of jeweler's rouge on there, and it'll just give you that little bit extra. Okay, so the other thing when it comes to planes is we don't want them perfectly straight, because what happens is if you start, you know, planing, is you'll start putting grooves in things, and that's not what we want. We want this slightly convex. Okay, so to do that, go back, take your 600. Now that you've got your sharpen, you like it the way it is. You're gonna push on the left side. Okay, then I'm gonna switch and put some pressure on the right side. Left side, right side, left side, right side. And if you put it, I've already got some black coming off there, that means it's working. And if you take it and put it flat against your flat surface, you should see small bits of daylight on either side of that, and that will tell you that you've got a slight convex shape, so that when you slice through things, you're not going to get caught up on the edges, and it's going to kind of plow things away. Okay, so put this back together and we'll tune it up. All right, now that the iron is nice and sharp, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chip breaker. Okay, I'm going to put it back together like so. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the chip breaker has just the barest whiff of top showing here, okay? Because we're only going to be cutting just the nanoest of hairs, okay? So maybe a 64th if you can get it, maybe even less, maybe a 128 if you can get it, but that's all we're going to do, okay? Still nice and sharp. Going to go ahead and put it back directly onto my frog like so. Okay, you can see I've got a very narrow window here in the mouth. This is probably too much. I would go back in and then move that whole frog forward just, just a slight bit. So right now it's not adjusted properly. We're just getting it back. You've got your clamp on top. Okay, gonna go ahead and, okay, we're locked. And if we can look through the top here, we can see some daylight, and we can see that it's not quite straight. So I'm gonna move it to the side. It needs some room. Okay, we're fairly straight there. And we're going to adjust, let's see, the in and out screw until I just barely feel it. Okay. Not quite there yet, not quite there yet. All right, just barely feel it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it back about half a turn, give it a push. If I get some nice wisp out of it, I'm gonna go back just a little bit more, and then I'm gonna try again. We're still not straight on this guy. Okay, you can see it here. We're not 100% straight, so go ahead and adjust it. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep taking small cuts out of it until it gives me a nice ribbon that I can see through. It's a very, very thin, wispy one, but otherwise that's it. Your plane should be good to go now. This should take, I don't know, give or take 20 or 30 minutes, depending on what kind of condition the sole is in and the other parts. But for the most part, this is going to be used, so I didn't do a full restoration just to make it functional and not make it completely, unusable. So anyway, hope this was helpful, and have a good one.